Hello all, welcome to the Knife Edge UK YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscription button. We really appreciate it, it helps out a great deal, make sure that our videos get to people. What do we have in front of us today? Well, this is going to be a bit of a glowing schmaltz fest, so if you don't like that sort of thing, move on. What we have here is the Mark III PITS, Pie in the Sky, by Mike Reed. This is one of the 70-ish that he did. The initial tubes all have up to 70 written on them, but I believe there were just a few more after that. I think it only went probably 5 more or something. And this is number 70 of 70 if you go by the tubes. And it's a bit of a grail knife in every single way for me. I absolutely love this thing. So let's do a few size comparisons before we do anything else. So there we have, as I say, the PITS Mark III. We have a UK PK. We'll put, I'm trying to keep this in with this sort of, you know, more modern sort of non-locking tactical type blade look. There we have a XM Slippy from Hinderer, and we will put it next to a couple of smaller knives as well. This is a knife that borrows the sort of mechanism quite closely from the PITS. That's the Nomad by Three Rivers. As you can see, it's substantially longer than that. Indeed, the blade on this is just under 3 inches, so it's by no means an ickle knife. And there we've got it next to a customised Pingo from Spyderco as well. So there you have it. That's what it looks like next to all those others. So we've got something at the very upper end of non-locking, technically legal UK spec, but one that certainly in any built-up area I'd be pretty dubious about carrying because it is quite large and it does look like it means business. So what is the PITS? Well, as many of you will have come across a knife which looks very, very similar to this, which is the Spyderco version, you know, in collaboration with Mike Reed, the Spyderco PITS, the Spyderco Pie in the Sky. Incidentally, if you're wondering, the name Pie in the Sky comes from Mike Reed's username on quite a few sort of UK forums like Edge Matters, and I think I'm sure British Blades before it was sadly defunct. Yeah, so this is a relatively sizable knife, and it will be recognisable to some of you from that point of view. It's actually interesting enough that if you go over to a few of the groups, you'll see a picture that I took of this next to a blue Spyderco PITS. And although lengthwise and everything else has lots in common, the PITS actually the Spyderco version actually comes across as actually a slightly larger knife, and that's just because it's a bit taller. And indeed, there is a run of these being done now. The list is already long filled, I'm afraid. Of the Mark IV version, as I say, this is the Mark III, and in that, Mike has decided to make the whole thing just a bit taller. Now, for me, that actually was quite nice from my point of view because I absolutely love the lines of this knife, and I was quite pleased that I didn't feel that I would be desperately missing out. I mean, this just looks stunning. Anyway, enough rambling and backstory. What actually is the PITS Mark III? Well, it's quite a simple knife in many ways. This is RWL 34 steel. Produced by Damasteel, I believe, and it's effectively the chemical cousin of CPM 154, so the carbon metallurgy version of 154 CM. It's a good steel, very, very good. The new ones are coming in LMAX, and when LMAX is treated properly, it's a tricky steel to heat treat as far as I know, and certainly as far as I've experienced, but it's just, you know, a step ahead of this RWL on the Mark III. Excuse me. Getting overly excited, so I need some water. We've got titanium handles with these holes drilled out of them. They're grooved. Incidentally, as you can see, the blade is this lovely, you know, drop point, very, very simple, classic blade shape. It's a high flat grind. It's very thin behind the edge. Beautifully thin behind the edge. For a blade that's this thick, this is it's not massively thick, but thick enough. This is a great slicer. I mean, that's a 3mm piece of blade stock comfortably, and this is a beautiful tall flat grind. You have the little Mike Reed etch there, and I say this is in a hand brushed satin finish. You got thumb studs there, and then we'll move on to the handle proper. So like I said, you have holes. It's all stonewashed titanium. Stonewashed titanium pocket clip, interesting sort of domed pivot arrangement, which is proud from the blade, which is quite nice, and everything's really nicely chamfered, super comfortable, beautiful shape. It's just really, really well done. The Pocket clip's probably my favourite pocket clip ever. It's super deep carry, so hopefully you can see there. It's actually, you end up with the fabric of whatever you're wearing actually over the top of the knife, so it completely disappears. It's really, really well done. Not everyone will like that. Some people like to be able to get hold of the piece of the knife when they're pulling it out of the pocket. For me, that's just ideal. Then it's got countersunk screws there, so you've got no screws that are actually in the path of your fabric. It just works really well. It's one of the best clips you're ever likely to come across as far as I'm concerned. And then the actual mechanism of the knife, which is kind of the claim to fame, is this kind of almost leaf spring idea. You have a cutout in the titanium on both sides with a pin in the back of it, which serves as not your stop pin, but your detent effectively. It serves as a closing pin, so when your blade is in the closed position, the tang of the blade is interacting with that detent pin, but once it's out, you then have a forward stop pin as well. So it's quite a clever arrangement. This one's fixed in place, and it just works beautifully. And one of the nicest things about this knife is that it's non-locking, but unlike most of what we have, this has fidget factor. It's just fantastic. And even though some of you will be thinking, hang on a minute, is that a flipper tab? Well, no, it's not. The whole idea, and you'll see it also on the Spyderco version, of this tab here, which does protrude quite unusually from the back of the frame there. Now, if I try and load this as a flipper tab, I'll preload it. Watch. Not getting anywhere near. Just not going to happen, because there just isn't a firm enough detent, and it's not got the geometry. As many of you will know, having a flipper tab at 90 degrees from a pivot works quite well, and this is actually, you know, well off of that. And it was never, ever, ever designed to be a flipping knife. This is supposed to be, you can flick this knife out for sure. You can just normally thumb it out with a thumb stud, candidly, like I just did. One of my favourite things to do is interact with both of them at the same time. You get a lovely, smooth opening doing that. It just works so well, because you break the detent with the back one and then push with the front. It's just really, really nice. What it's designed for, though, is to be a finger choil. So, a finger guard, not a finger choil. Basically, it's in place of a choil. So you're still quite far up on the blade here. Sure, I mean, if we had a finger choil, you'd be in here, which would be even more so. But you get maximum cutting edge this way, and you get complete safety. I can't close this knife on my hand. It's just no way. I mean, in any grip, I mean, that's one of the things that, I mean, even if you're going to hold it reverse grip or even pinch grip, you're going to struggle, because that's going to interact with your first finger, particularly if you've got larger hands than me. You're very, very safe. And then on top of that, if you're putting any pressure at all, particularly in a saber grip like this, on that back spring, you basically can't open, you can't close the knife. It feels like it's locked, like it's a fixed blade. It's incredibly secure and well done. It's very, very, very smooth. And then on top of all that, if you're happy to use some wrist, it's hard on camera, if you're happy to use some wrist, you can also flick it out with that like a flipper tab. So this, I mean, this can be opened in every way that you can imagine, really. It just works so well. I mean, you don't need a lot of finger pressure to do that. It's, you know, we don't get an awful lot when it comes to, you know, UK legal spec technical knives. You don't get a lot of fidgety fun ones, you know, aside from the walk and talk on a traditional or something like that. But this one absolutely fits that bill, and it's only such a shame that there's not more of them around for more people. You've got a little G10 backspacer, which is perfectly well done. I would love to have that changed to something exotic, because this is such a gorgeous knife. But yeah, overall, that is, I just dropped it. That is the PITS Mark III, and it's just spectacular. So before we sign off, have a quick look over it again from every angle. And indeed, if you go on some of the groups, you'll find some photos I've taken of this. It's just a beautiful knife. They don't get any better than this. It's so thin behind the edge. Such a fantastic slicer. Beautifully made. I mean, there's literally nothing wrong with this knife at all. And you can push it closed like that as well, which is a lovely feature. Yeah, it's just such a pleasure. So there we go, guys. I'm luxuriating this a bit, so forgive me. Hopefully you're still enjoying it. This is the PITS Mark III from Mike Reed. As much as the Mark IV I know will be an amazing knife, with a slightly better steel than this one as well, I think just on the sheer beauty of the knife alone, it's very, very, very hard to beat the Mark III. Thanks very much, guys. I'll catch you at the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.